and thanks so much for tuning in to the Market Wrap on BloombergQuint. I'm Mathew. Well, the bulls, it seems, had a good lunch because the benchmarks recovered from the day's low to trade positive. The Nifty 50 closing over 300 points higher than the low point of the day. And with that, they regained or recovered a third of what they lost in yesterday's session. A point to note on volatility, India VIX, in fact, cooled off a bit today. Let's take a look at the chart, in fact, and see where it currently is. There you can see it's cooled off by about 5% in today's session, and that is quite significant. Yesterday, remember, there was a big spike in India VIX, and that kind of showcased the kind of volatility that we've seen both yesterday and today. It's still at heady levels, but it's significantly lower than yesterday. For the benchmarks, we've ended, like I said, at near the high point of the day. So let's take a look at what brought us to this point. The defensives were very clearly the stars of the show today, just like we thought that they would be. That's how we had set up for trade. The IT and pharma stocks on the Nifty 50 pulling most of the weight of the Nifty higher. In fact, you have, Adani Ports as the top gainer, but you have HCL Tech Mahindra, Infosys, all in the top 5 gainers in that session. You also had quite a few names in the pharma space. There you have Sun Pharma, you have Divi's Labs making the top 10 gainers, but you also had quite a few other names. Cipla, for example, gaining quite strongly in trade today. Among the losers, of course, you have only a handful of stocks. You have Kotak Mahindra Bank and HDFC, also Bajaj Finance. Bajaj Finance sort of flitting just higher and below that important 5,000 mark that was quite significant psychologically for that stock on the upside. And when it reached that, there was quite a bit of strength that built into that stock. It'll be interesting to see what happens now that that level has been breached once or twice in today's session as well. Reliance Industries, for the most part, was actually dragging the Nifty lower, but it recovered quite strongly to the end of the session. In fact, that is the story of today's session. For the most part, we actually had losers, and towards the end of the session, that kind of switched, and you had quite a few recoveries taking place. I'll be quite keen to focus on the flows data that comes out later this evening, because yesterday was a day when the FIIs turned net sellers for the first time since mid-November. And in fact, barring that one session, since the start of November, they had not sold on a single day. And during that period, they've pumped in about 1 lakh crore rupees. So if that tap turns off, and if the trend it shows that there's a reversal of that trend, that it's going to be interesting to watch whether the DIIs step into the breach like they did yesterday, and how long they're going to be able to buy and support the markets. But let's also talk about the broader markets, because the market breadth that was showcased in the Nifty was actually what you saw in the broader markets as well. For the most part, you had declines, but we ended up even Stevens towards the end, and then you had more gainers than losers in the broader markets as well. And you see that very clearly in some of the names that are on the screen. You have, for example, Kolte Patil Developers. You have a number of Adani Group companies actually doing also quite well. I have NIIT, which did quite well in trade today as well, gained as much as 6.2%. It's going to consider a buyback of equity shares on the 24th of December, in just a couple of days. You have Shipping Corporation that rallied significantly. That company, is seeking bids for a strategic sale of Shipping Corporation. The government, of course, is looking to sell its entire stake of 63.75%. And the deadline that it set for itself is March 1st, 2021. That's a development that came in today, of course. Now, it's going to be interesting going forward. We're heading into the holiday season, so volumes globally could be a little muted for the remainder of the year. But having said that, the fiscal stimulus bill in the US has passed muster in the Senate. That's quite an important development, and it has now gone to President Donald Trump for his signature, and there could well be a sentimental boost once that goes through. But experts have pointed out that it's not going to immediately bolster the economy. It's going to take a little time for that to happen. So any gains could just be short-lived, considering that we have been at heady levels for the US markets. But there's also, the jobs data to look forward to, and that could have a bearing on the markets as well. In fact, let's pull up that screen and have a look at how the European markets are trading. Remember, yesterday they traded quite weak, and they ended quite low at the low points of the day, in fact. But it's not too bad. The screen's not looking too bad. You have the German DAX that is gaining in trade. You have in fact, most of them are gaining in trade after that session that they ended in the red yesterday. The US indices are indicating that it could well be a reasonably positive start to trade for them in the evening when those markets open up. But that's more or less how we've looked in today's session. Like I said, the key watching point for me is going to be whether the flows data is indicating a shift and whether FIIs have actually started selling in the Indian markets. Do stay tuned, lots more coming up. This is BloombergQuint.